Welcome back to the Nullified Take channel on YouTube, where I'm your host, Chris, and we've got the TNT takes for you on Wheel of Time, episode 7. That's right. I'm back with my co-host, Will. Hashtag Will of Concussion. Will of
Yes. The amount of people that seem to just get pushed against walls and concussed in this show lately has just been quite
What a
entertaining.
violence. Yeah, it's been a lot of violence. And Andre Lee in the live with $5 right off the bat. Thank you so much, Andre Lee. I'm going to butcher this, but he says, Mia Devonia Nosedin Sunde, which I think I had a look at it. It translates in the old tongue to luck carry me through. It sounds like something that Matt would say, Will.
Yes, very much so. Very much.
Hey, I'm getting good at this. I'm starting to spot it. I'm starting to get used to the character traits that each one of these characters have. And we're getting somewhere. And this was a fun episode. Like every single episode that we're getting, it's building up momentum and speed. One of the things that I hope and wish for moving into the next season, I know we haven't concluded this season yet, is that we don't have like this fall off of momentum in the first 2 or 3 episodes again going into the next season. Because a lot of the times with shows back in the day, I very much remember this. There used to be like the first couple episodes were like really interesting. Then there's like a big lull in the middle. That's when we used to get like 20 episodes for a show. And then right at the end, it would be exciting again. And then it would be like back to the lull. So just hope they can keep this momentum, right, Will?
Yeah, it's that sort of that pattern that they have. And that's, I suppose that's probably a clutch for script writers themselves. They will have that set arc for a season. Whereas I suppose they're using the book material to try and work out how they can go from story to story and sort of telling. So yeah, I hope it's not too prescriptive in that respect, but you just don't know. But yeah, no, definitely shows are generally quite prescriptive of how they roll.
Yeah, Lena says, wow, because we're live. And Danica's asking us, what is the next non-reality show that we're going to be watching? So that, or Danica, I should say, so that she can be prepared for it. We actually just spoke about it before going live. We're thinking of covering House of Dragons, the Game of Thrones offshoot next. And what we might do, Danica, if you haven't watched the first season, both myself and Will watched the first 3 episodes. And then lost momentum because life got busy. But because we're going to be covering it, we might do a rewatch of season 1 and then do a couple of podcasts on that, like a conclusion of what we thought of the first season in preparation for the next season. Because I think the next season is around February or March next year. So there's plenty of time still before that comes out. And then if you feel brave, Michael Maki on the channel, he's going to be covering Ahsoka pretty soon. He's doing a season review for Star Wars. So if you're a Star Wars fan, that's something else you can get into. Dolores is saying, I'm so looking forward to this discussion. This episode had me going. It was a good episode, wasn't it, Dolores? Yes, the rewatch podcast. Definitely will do that. Danica says, do I have to have watched Game of Thrones first? No. It helps, but it's a standalone story. So where Game of Thrones would help you is it'll give you immediately a point of reference of who these different factions are, what the world's about. But we can talk about that in the podcast as well. Because
we need to do a bit of research as well. Because I will. I was one that didn't watch Game of Thrones when everyone else did, so I didn't spend years watching it. I waited till it was all done and dusted, and then binged it in about a week.
Oh wow! So will I be the experienced one on that one? Will the
tables
turn?
I have read some of the books though.
I'm not a book reader, so you'll have the book stuff. But yeah, you can definitely get into it without having seen the show. It's a standalone show. It takes place like a couple of 1,000 years or 1,000 years before the Game of Thrones events. In any case, Doris said yes, House of Dragons. Oh my goodness, I love it so much. There we go. No, Danica, I did that one first. Then I binged Game of Thrones, and listening to some of their dialogue really helped, in my opinion. Okay. So yeah, it's a lot of seasons to watch for Game of Thrones. I don't feel like you need to watch it, but if you wanted to, you could go back. I think it's like 10 seasons or something like that. So
you've got until February, so if you get bored,
yeah, it was. Yeah, I don't want to spoil anything for you because you haven't watched Game of Thrones, but yeah, maybe watch it because we may spoil stuff, in the recap, I'd say. But let's get into Wheel of Time, Will. Very interesting start here to the episode. We get a flashback 20 years back to when Moiraine and Swan were in the White Tower, and this was prior to her becoming the the seat, the Amyrlin seat, and they're there. They're having a discussion. You can just see in the way that they're sort of in each other's company, that they're enjoying life. They don't have the weight of the world on their shoulders. They're young. They're in love. They're talking about potentially going to meet with Moraine's dad and sister. And it's so good to see a little bit of a glimpse of, because I kind of, they kept pointing out that 20 years ago things changed for Moraine. And I was always like, why? What was it? So obviously the dragon was reborn. I should have known. It's pretty obvious.
Yeah. The Gitara sort of prophecy is essentially, isn't it, with the telling of the fact that the dragon was reborn. I thought the de-aging was really good in this scene. You could, I mean, theoretically the Aes Sedai don't age the same anyway, but I thought they both had that feeling of being, good 20 years younger. And they were all ecstatic and happy. No, they didn't. They didn't have that. They didn't have that age of responsibility. They looked like they were just fresh-faced, blue Aes Sedai, blue-eyed Aes Sedai that were.
It's like you before the kids will.
Yeah. Just making sure they're not hearing. Yeah, no. There's a bit more here, I suppose. I grew out on the front now. It was really interesting, and it's nice to hear a little bit of backstory about Suan as well, living in a bamboo hut, being a fisherman, and then the banter between her and whether or not Moiraine would become a fishwife. That was fun. It was quite cute. And then obviously it cut to them going in to see Gitara Sedai and the vision happening.
Yeah. And how big of a sort of role does she play in the books? Like, is this sort of a nod to the books directly in regards to the vision and how it happened, or was this again,
it's a little bit different. There was from memory, it was differently done. Both Suan and Moiraine, I think, were only accepted, and they were doing like jobs for the Amarillion and Gitara at the time, and they were in like a throne room type thing when it all went down.
Because I feel like there's a lot that they left out for us at this stage. We saw obviously the vision with them going to see her, and she had the vision. She's like, okay, the dragon is being born right now, and it gave us that flashback, which was so cool to see, because I already read about that in the first book. Like the first book, they already explained like the whole birth thing. So they obviously had to find a way to visually bring that scene into the show and for it to make sense. So we get to see Rand's mother. We get to see his adopted father, which probably a lot of people who haven't read the books wouldn't know.
Yeah, you only see him from the top. You don't really see his face, do you? It's just from the back scene, which was the exact same scene we'd seen from season 1.
Yeah, sorry, what's his name again? It's
Tam al'Thor. Yeah.
Tam al'Thor. So Rand's adopted father is the one who was there when the baby was born, basically at that point. And later on, before I forget, because I don't want this to be forgotten, I felt really, really happy about remembering this from my book read. So it's like one of the few times I can add extra sauce to the podcast. When Rand has his sword and you see the little icon of the heron on it, that is actually a nod, because that is his adopted dad's sword, and it basically says that he's a blade master, which clearly tells you that there is a big story behind him in regards to that. He's not just like a normal farmer. Yeah,
and there's I think there's a bit of fan fiction too that's out there on the internet somewhere for a Tam and what he got up to earn that blade, the heron sword. It was never actually there was not a lot of information given, and Tam being quite a stoic farmer, he didn't really go into details either in different parts of the story. So it'll be interesting. It's a nice little nod. Well done on remembering that. The heron,
I remember that.
And there's quite a few different cuts to the close up for the heron blade as well, and the heron the buckle that holds the sword onto the back of Rand later on as well. It sort of close ups a few times to that. I thought it was really interesting how they twinned the death of Rand's mother with the death of Gitara, and how that vision worked, and they sort of died at the same time. And basically, the description that she used was, you can hear it, the earth is shaking type thing, that with the dragon being born on the slopes of Mount Doom. And then basically that was also poor old Moiraine and Soya. Like literally, they'd been out the door talking about the world is their oyster; they could do whatever they want. We may be we may advise the daughter heir of Andor, and then next thing you know, no, we've got bigger purpose.
Bigger fish
The wheel
to
is
fry.
the wheel has decided we've got something else to do.
Yeah, and I think this is where throughout the episode it's going to be interesting, because for me, it's interesting to see where they end up as. Like Sion becomes the future, Amelin seat. Moraine's got her thing, and they talk about how they both were assigned different duties, and that hasn't been fully explained to us yet, how that came to be. So I'm wondering if that will be something that in the future we'll get a better understanding of, how Sion became the Amelin seat, why Moraine didn't become the Amelin seat, why her mission was something different. And those are the things that you kind of read between the lines, even in their dialogue as they're talking to each other. There's a lot that we are still yet to find out as viewers of the show, which I'm intrigued by. I'm interested by it. And please let us, continue to let us know in the comment section below as well. If you're watching this after the live, we always get really good comments, what your thoughts are on this as well. If you're a book reader, don't spoil it for me, please, because I haven't yet seen everything. But the scene was well done, like Lena said. Also, Mucky, welcome to the live as well. Game of Thrones, which we won't go into too much now that we're actually into this podcast, but Mucky is one of my co-hosts for some of the other shows that we do here. So welcome back to the live. Okay, so going back to present day, we have Moraine. Finally, she was summoned to go and see Sion here. Now we know the tension between them. We get the relationship a lot better, the history that they have. And this was an interesting scene because she is really upset because Moraine's been writing to her for months, 6 months at this point, never told her that she was stilled, and says that you're lying to me. Why did you lie? And she said, you're the one person I'm the most truthful to. So really an interesting scene for her to be summoned there, and just to see this power dynamic, because there's so many different things that are happening here. They've got the responsibility. She's got the responsibility of the Amelin seat. She's got to look after the White Tower, and Moraine is only concerned about the dragon. That is her one. And then they've got their own relationship in between of this. And that is something that's going to be fully fleshed out throughout the episode.
Oh, it's a very conflicting, very deep link that they've got, isn't it? And all the things that they've got, the balls that they're juggling, and the world is at stake, essentially, if they don't do it correctly. So the pressure on them both. And like you joked, 20 years, they've aged a bit then, because of the fact they've got so much resting on their shoulders. I liked the little bit with Leanne being pissed that she'd been sent outside. She was really miffed that she'd been sort of sent to go out, which I thought was really interesting. And then you've also got the fact that Sion is saying, hey, you threatened to let Alana take Lan's bond. And like I think I said in the previous podcast, how that's a really, really rough threat. Like, that's a really big thing to threaten. And that bond is incredibly intimate. And we actually do see, I'll talk a bit more about the water and the Aes Sedai bond later on when we get to another scene. It's a very personal link to someone. You can feel their emotions. You can feel what they're feeling. Like Waters and Aes Sedai can kind of communicate too, with that bond. And the fact that she's gone, I'm going to, I threatened, that's a really big one. And I think, as I mentioned previously, so the fact that Soya knows about it, she'd be pretty miffed about the whole situation as well. And the fact that she never told Moraine never told her about being stilled either, is huge, because that's a responsibility. Moraine needs to be able to keep tabs on Rand, and if she's been stilled, how on earth can she do that? What power has she got to keep him in line? She can't. And that's a sort of a breakdown of trust there too, I suppose, because you're not being completely honest with each other.
Yeah. She basically, I think there's this line where she says, you've let your personal ambitions cloud your judgment, or something like that throughout this as well. And that's what I like about it, because Moraine isn't perfect. None of these characters are perfect. They're all flawed in their own way. And it's interesting as it plays out. Lena says here, she doesn't understand why they only approved 8 episodes. We needed 10 at least. And again, I think budget probably is the big thing. But hopefully, if the show continues to get supported well, which it still is, I just had a look today, it's still second in Australia. I don't know what it's over there in New Zealand, but it's
Yeah,
doing
not
really
sure.
well.
Gen
on the
V,
ratings.
Gen V is quite high. I think is sort of taken over as a new thing drop. And the Days Damar was the title of this episode that we just watched, episode 7. And I think Andrea Lee points out that it means the great game. It's sort of like your political manipulation. It's a lot of discussion around wheelings and dealings and secret what different you say something and what that means, and what it could have different levels of meaning depending on how you say it. And I think there's some real obvious points about and links to Days Damar in the episode. Then there's a couple bits that I think when we get to it, you read between the lines a little bit more, may link to it, but it's not as sort of obvious.
Yeah. We also get at this point, I was going to say, we get her revealing that Lan has now also let Alana know about the dragon, which is quite significant because the news is out at this point. At this point, no one else knew. We're going to talk later on about how significant the whole fact is that both sides, it seems, once ran to proclaim he's the dragon, not just the Dark. I picked up on that. Not just the Dark wants him to proclaim it. Moiraine also wants him to do that. And that's a bit of dialogue that comes up a little bit later on. So more people will be aware of him being there, and the significance potentially of that. But there's this really great scene between Lan and Rand before he goes in, where he's preparing him to go in. And
warmed the cockles of my heart. It was great.
Yeah, because this is something that was a nod to people that read the books, right? Because Lan is supposed to teach him how to do sword fighting. And he kind of comments on the stance that he's using, and what he should be doing in future fights and that.
Yeah.
So how cool was that to see? Finally, we get a great Lan and Rand sort of scene.
It was great. And it was a nod to the book as well. The second book actually starts with Rand and Lan, and Suyan arrives with an entourage of Aes Sedai to Shinar, Faldara, where they finished the end of season 1. And in the book, that's where they have the first sort of meeting where Rand and Suyan meet for the very first time. And Lan prepares Rand for that meeting and talks to him about how to walk, how to approach, and Suyan is in the book miffed about the fact that Lan has been training him because she wanted to see him as this hapless shepherd and sheep farmer, and now he's got this, he's standing tall, he's bowing properly, he's saying the right things that he shouldn't already know. And that was a nice nod from the book, which I really appreciated. The little tricks, like the sword off, when Lan was like, you need to take your sword off, like that sort of thing was just cool. I like that. Like it probably doesn't mean a lot to a lot of people, but it was just a nice little nod for us book readers and fans of Lan who have maybe not been overly appreciative of some of the things that have changed previous episodes for him. But this was a nice one. And what the statement, for a man, whatever comes, face it on your feet. I thought that was really cool.
And that's so true even in life. Like that's kind of the advice your dad would give you, as a young boy growing up. So that was interesting seeing that sort of relationship evolve between the two of them on the screen finally, especially because they've spent so much time separate in this season as well. And another really key dialogue that he brought up there that I sort of noted as well, again, it's just also really humanizing Siuan in a lot of ways, because he says that she comes from less than even you. You're like this shepherd, this farmer boy from the Two Rivers, but she had less than that. So she isn't who you think that she is. She's like, he's basically saying there's more depth to her. And I think that's interesting because going into meeting with Siuan, he kind of mentions that to her, and she says, very few people are ever truly in this world who they are meant to be. Yeah. But you and I, we don't have that luxury today. We need to be very upfront and honest with each other, which I love the dialogue between the two of them. Him saying that he's ready to serve or fight, and she's like, are you now, boy? Knowing that he's so far from ready. Great dialogue between the two of them. But ultimately, we see a little bit of her ruthless side in this episode because she ends up shielding him because they want to put him in a cage and have control. They don't want the Forsaken to get their hands on him at this stage. And it was really cool to see her also sort of point out the fact that you have been 6 months with Moraine, which, in all fairness, he hasn't been the full 6 months with her.
And
But you've learned nothing.
But that actually also tells us that maybe Moiraine hasn't been honest with Suyan as well. If Suyan still thinks that she's been with him for the last 6 months, well, we all know that they haven't been together at all for the last 6 months, and Moraine's been up in the hills collecting water. So I thought that was interesting. I thought that actually tells us a bit more about the communication or the lack thereof between the two of them than it tells, which I thought was interesting. And speaking of shielded, you had a question before pop up about the difference between stilled and shielded. Is one reversible and one is not? Yeah. So basically, a shield is like you've just put a shield around someone's ability to power to use the one power, and you've got to use the one power to put that shield up, whereas the stilled is like you're severed from it and you can no longer reach out and touch the one power.
Which we're going to talk about still later on, because there's some interesting information that came in from that as well. So we'll bring that back up.
But in that scene with Rand and Suyan, it's a shield that she puts on him to stop him from touching the source.
Yeah. Corkspark, welcome to the live. Here says all of Amazon shows 8 episodes, 10 was never going to happen for this one, and it's fine. Listen, as long as I get 8 quality episodes, I can live with that. And so far, I've enjoyed it. But again, I'm coming from a non-book reader's perspective, and I'm liking what they're giving us.
The only thing that I'd say that would be nice with more episodes is the fact that we could spend a bit more time, a bit slow down the pace a little bit, and get to sort of get more information and get to familiarize ourselves better with our characters. Because there's the only and that would only happen if they had more episodes. But then I'd be concerned if they had more episodes to try and get more action in, which would then cut that down. So I don't know. It's interesting. I like that they've cut the startup. Like when I first watched, they didn't have in the second season, they don't have that big long start. That was just so they could maximize the time they do have. And every episode is just over an hour and 5 minutes, to try and make sure they get as much screen time as they possibly can. I'm curious to see what the runtime is going to be for the last episode, whether or not it's going to be an hour. There's talks and hopes, and the people out there are hoping it's going to be an hour and a half, just to try and sort of get as much content as we can, but don't know. We'll have to wait and see till next week.
Yeah, because it's interesting you mentioned that, because there's still certain of the Aes Sedai and some of the political things that we're slowly but surely starting to get to understand a little bit better. But that's where maybe a little bit more world building, a little bit more time would have helped. But we do get a great scene here, and I'm going to stay with White Tower. I know that the show jumped to Elaine and Nynaeve next, but I want to stay with the White Tower and talk a little bit about how Viren is operating within the city. And she's got her Browns getting a map from the Ogiers, which are builders, to find out the tunnels, which I thought was so cool. And in the moment, it didn't make sense to me. And then when later on Elaine calls Loial a builder, I was like, that's why she got the map, because they're the builders. They're the architects, right? So in any case, but that was a really cool scene. And then having Alana there with her 2 wards who don't trust even Viren fully in this moment, which I thought was very interesting. And what was the most interesting from this, because at the end of the day, I think it was Ivan, he wanted to follow Viren to see what she's up to. And Alana didn't like it because she wanted the 3 of them to stay together due to there potentially being a Forsaken within the city. She obviously cares for them, don't want them to be split in case they're weaker separate or that one of them get hurt. And she gets outvoted. I didn't realize that she had that kind of relationship where Maxim outvotes her with Ivan, and he does end up going, which was really cool to see the dynamic between the 3 of them.
And that was where I was going to talk about the link with the Bond. You can see that they almost had that the whole discussion. They talked about it, and then it went quiet, and then there was sort of like that look between the waters back to Alana, and then there was, all right, that's 2-1. So it was almost like, and it was a nod to the fact of that bond being really, like, they can communicate with their bond. And yeah, there's definitely, it was a nice nod there. And then you have Ivan not trusting Viren and being a bit like, and Alana's just like, I just want to keep my boys with me because there's Forsaken charging around. And then Maxim's like, well, actually, what about Leandrin?
Yeah,
What's
he's on
she
the
up
money.
to? Yeah. And then it cuts to her visiting the house of Demandred house, which I thought was really interesting as well.
Yeah, it was a very interesting scene, obviously with Landrin there. Just before we go into that, and we can talk about that next in its conclusion, that whole scene, we've got Andrew Lee saying that we need a Brown Sister book or TV series. That they're like one of the more interesting Aes Sedai to me at the moment. I'm really enjoying them.
And there was a little throwaway line about two Brown sisters wanting to study a male channeler as well later on in the episode, which I thought,
Yes.
oh, here we go. This could be our branch off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's remember that. I definitely want to talk about that little dialogue later on as well. But Leandra does go and visit Moiraine's house.
Yeah,
she goes there, ends up talking to her nephew, Moiraine's nephew, and he's sworn an oath to the dark because that's why he's climbed the ranks as quickly as he did. And again, Moiraine's sister proving to be very cunning, listening in on the thing, outsmarting his son, ultimately capturing him. What did you think of the storyline? This is kind of left field, right?
It is, but it's also this was one of those ones where I was like, okay, this is very much a Days Dammar, like the great game where you're like, yeah, this is royal business, mother. You need to go upstairs, and then knowing that like the Days Dammar, they always sort of are secretive and spyish. She's got a little hidden chamber underneath where she can listen in, which was just perfect. So I was very pleased that she was able to listen in because I thought if she didn't, the time it was going to take for us to find out or for her to find out would have taken ages. This was a nice, quick way of tidying that up already. Like now we know Barthanes is in the dark, but already within this one episode, we find that out and it's dealt with. Like it could have been another loose end that they maybe had to try and figure out how to tie up if they hadn't done it all in one. And I thought that was a really nice way of going, right, we've now got key information about Barthanes. She now knows that Liandrin is a dark sister. Like, this is another person now that knows that she's a Black Ajah. And she now knows that she's going to have to do something with her son because her son's wanting to kill her sister. And that whole, it's just like, holy moly, poor and Avia would just be like, her world's just crumbled around her. Her son that she's been living for all this time is now, she's getting ready to crown him king. They've been having food tastings and everything else.
That's a tough call to make.
And now she had to go, all right, am I going to let him carry on, become king, and then deal with it later, or am I going to nip it in the bud straight away? And she doesn't pull back. She goes, right, you're a dark one, you're a dark friend. We need to deal with it. And I just think that whole interaction between her and Barthanes, her son, was really interesting. And then like, how could you do this just for Moiraine? Like she doesn't trust you. She doesn't. As soon as she leaves, she's going to forget. Leave us and forget about us. And she's like, yeah, but there's two things that my sister, there's two things my sister understands better than anything: the difference between right and wrong, and how hard it is sometimes to do what is right. And I just thought that's another very, very true for life in general, that sometimes it can be really hard to do the right thing, but you got to do it anyway.
And thinking about this a little further, because I agree with everything you said. It was very interesting, and I wanted to welcome Prince to the live as well, saying just hopping on, catching up at 1.5 speed. Just wanted to say thank you again for adding Wheel of Time recaps to the channel. Andrew Lee saying, which Brown sister is in danger of getting killed or murdered? It's hard to call that out at the moment. If I had to, it'd probably be the one that's the most prominent on the screen, right? Like it's the only one that would hurt if they.
No. I think it'll be a cut to the White Tower and our other Brown sister that we haven't got traveling with them. May
right. You reckon
she's not there? Maybe, I don't know. They may not.
That would for me as a neutral, that would hurt less watching it. If we had to lose the one that's more prominent, then that would be like, damn, she was cool. She had such great personality. But yeah, the one thing you didn't explore with that whole thing is like, what I was asking myself the whole time is like, okay, well, who's trying to kill Liandrin? Like, Moiraine. Who's the one who ordered Liandrin to do it? Because she's working with Lanfear. Yeah, she's working with Lanfear, right? It's got to be Lanfear. Yeah. So it's interesting that Lanfear is like, well, and this is why I love Lanfear's character. She's like, I can't be too obvious about me wanting to take Moraine off the board because Rand won't want to work with me. So I'm going to
Well,
find a
at the
different way. I'm going to find a different way. Someone's going to try and take it out from the side, and it will never be linked back to me. Which
yeah,
I love that about Lanfear's character. She's very
but that
calculated.
also once again links to Days Damar, the game. That's the game
Yeah.
everyone's playing. They're all playing the secretive game that no one really knows what's happening. You know, like there's levels upon levels about what's happening, and you've got. And I really like that because the cuts when Rand goes into the dream world and talks with Lanfear, he's like, "We're in a cell," and she's like, "I know, I'm still in Carahan in a cell." I'm like, "I know," because she's sent her Leandrin minion, who she's linked up with the last episode, to go and kill to get Moiraine killed. And how devastating would it be for her nephew to do it? Or looking at it a different Days Damar level, maybe Lanfear knew all along that the auntie was the sister was going to notice that her son was going to be a dark friend, and now it's completely thrown the family into disillusion now, because now Demandred family, he's never going to be king. So that's a different level again that you could look at.
So it's a win no matter what. She set it up
Lanfear's
to win no matter what. Yeah. I'm loving that. A great,
and that's that's crushing Moiraine in a different way, because now she knows that her nephew is,
and without taking the blunt approach of alienating Rand in the process. So it's next level gameplay by Lanfear here. I'm really appreciating this. And we move on to the next scene with Elaine and Nynaeve in farm, and they're out there walking. And this was interesting because Nynaeve kind of has to take a step back. She's used to being the lead in regards to planning how they're going to do things. But, Elaine, very perceptive, again, picks up that, no one in the city seems to care that they've been overthrown or anything like that. And the soldiers are there, obviously keeping them in check. But she mentions that, hey, I've noticed that an Ogier traveled with you guys here. This is the plan moving forward. So Loial is the person that she wants to talk to about how to do it. And again, very interesting, because she knows that he's a builder. They get him. He wants to bow and, acknowledge her as the heir apparent. And I love the little dialogue with Nynaeve saying, don't encourage her. We don't need that. That's such cool little dialogue between the two of them. Gives you a little bit of an understanding of they're probably going to become really good friends through this, especially now that they're bonding through this process of having to get Egwene freed. But that was really cool, him being all, courteous and all that. And then they're trying to find out how to get into the kennels. And they really ultimately come to the realization that there is no way to do it unless they were a Sudan with their Daimani. That's the only way they can go in there.
It's the only way you're going to get in. I really love that. Once again, it's another nod to the book. The Loial being very formal, following a set procedure of saying hello. And I love the bit that Nynaeve is just cutting them down quickly. Like, hey, we don't have time for this, man. You need to go. And there's always Loial is always complaining about humans being hasty. Because Lowell is being an ogre. I think he's classified as an Ogier teenager, or they talk about how his mustache his eyebrows aren't long enough, and he's hasty. He's hasty for an Ogier standard, but then he's always complaining about the humans being hasty because they just want to get through. And this was Nynaeve being hasty, and I was waiting for him to say something about humans being hasty. I was waiting for it. It didn't happen, but it was that sort of nod, which I thought I quite liked. And then, like you said, they've found out now that Egwene is in the kennels in the prison that's being watched by the Death Watch, which is the elite army for the elite soldiers. The Death Watch are like the SAS of Sanshin. So they're hard to get by, and basically they've said, and he says, you can only get by if you're a Soldam or if you're Damane. So interesting.
And I really appreciated that, even though Nynaeve in this moment, she is so hyper focused on getting Egwene out, she lets him know, and she puts him at ease, listen, we're not leaving you behind. We're coming for you as well. Once again, showing that part of Nynaeve where she really cares for her people, like, and that was the struggle she had even when she was going through the Aes Sedai training, that when she went through the what was it, the archers, where she said, I'm not leaving people behind. She wants to be there for people. She wants to be a dependable person. And again, that loyalty is still there, which I thought was really good. And sort of just to tie the knot on this specific storyline, obviously later on they do capture a Sudan and they put the collar on her. Yes. So obviously they're going to try and pretend like this is a Damani that they're taking in there. So going undercover.
And Elaine's like, you know, how do you think it's going to feel? And Nynaeve was like, I hope it hurts like hell, you know?
Yeah, she's got like no sympathy. And which, I mean, after seeing the pain of, you know, I forgot the name of that, the yellow Aes Sedai in the previous episode. After seeing the pain she had to go through, Rama, I mean, you can't blame Nynaeve for not caring.
No,
right?
No.
And just
and they
knowing
watched it. They watched it from up in the window, didn't they? So yeah, no, it was interesting. It's going to be curious to see how that pans out and how they break in to get her out using the Adam, and now they've got a Saldam collared, which will be interesting. Because theoretically, there's two different types of people. One, and if this Adam works on a Saldam, it's going to throw a few questions out there for the Sanchin as well.
100%.
But I can't go into much details.
Right. So there's more for us to see there in the future. But I also want to move into the scene next year with Lan and Moiraine. Back in White Tower, they're reconnecting, and that's going to lead into another scene. I think after that we're going to see as well. Which I definitely want to talk about. But Moiraine, obviously, you know, talking about how he betrayed her trust and how she's so upset with him. But she's treated him like dirt this season. Like, I mean, I'm sorry. Like, and he was in such a bad spot. She doesn't appreciate the fact that he wasn't walking out alive if he didn't give up the secret about the dragon right there. So this was interesting about, you know, I think that, you know, Lan continues to push that on her. You can't do this by yourself. And specifically talking to her about, you know, having been cut off, have you ever felt like you wanted to end it all? And about only two people or two Aes Sedai ever being able to be stilled and not do that, which is quite significant, I feel like, in the greater scope of things.
Yeah, it's huge. And yeah, she's just pleased, I suppose, that he was relieved to find out that she was not intending to end it. You know, because Moiraine was understandably quite peeved with him, quite mad and angry, and basically she just wants him to leave, doesn't she? She's like, you need to go. And he's like, I've done research. Only two women in history haven't actually topped themselves. And her reasoning was, Rand's too important. The world is too important. And that you almost got a feeling like he was relieved to hear that she's got that mission, and if it is a stilling, she'll be the third. He almost was reassured, knowing the amount of importance she's put on it, that she's going to be the third person to do it, because he knows her inside and out as well, and knows and trusts that she's stubborn enough that if she's got a mission, which is what the Blue Aja is all about, you know, you've got that cause to fight for, that she's going to do it. And that basically he's like, look, he says, I had to tell someone, because if you won't trust me, maybe you'll trust her, because he knows the link that her and Surin have. And I thought that was really powerful, and it sort of helped explain to everyone as to why he went running to Mum, basically, because they call her Mother. You know, the Amyrlin state, they call her Mother, so he's basically run to Mother. But his logic behind it was, well, if you won't believe me, you won't trust me, maybe you'll trust her.
Yeah, listen, she's been very cold on Lan. This whole season it's been tough to watch, because he's obviously cares so much for her, but it's not just Lan. It seems to be that is her character, because that's even how she acts in front of her sister, her nephew, who at that point she doesn't know.
Distant. Yeah. She's got her shields up.
But there's going to be an interesting development towards the end, because she's going to have to trust in someone at some point, right? So we're going to talk about that in a bit. And this scene with Lan and Moiraine kind of led into another scene in this episode that I think was quite significant. It obviously has a massive effect on the end of this episode, but Lan does go and see Logain. at this
Yes.
point. And Logain is like, they're just beating up on this character right now, like constantly beating up on him, because Lan goes there. He's like, listen, I'm still waiting on your master to come back and give me the knife that she
Yeah.
promised me. I've done my part, or you can just end it right now and put that blade through me. All the guy wants is to not live anymore. Like, he just wants it to end, right? All the madness, not having the power, being cut off from it, it's too much for him. And Lan does sort of put a key in front of him, says, listen, we can bargain, we can haggle, you can get out of here, you can do whatever you want from that point. I need some information. When you looked at Rand, could see the weaves around him. What do you see when you look at Moraine? And again, love like the more and more Logain is there, and like how he, I don't know, there's something about him. I really love this character. I really love this character. And he's like, he spits in the face of the help that Lan wants to give him, but then Lan is like pissed off, and he's like, well, what do you expect? You guys caged me. You guys took everything from me. What do you expect from me? Like, I'm going to be just happy to help you? I don't give a shit.
I'm going to be honest. I'm going to be honest with you. Like, yeah.
I love that.
And also, I also quite enjoyed the little scene that led just before Lan came into there was Maxim and Alana. And Maxim was busy sitting there looking at his sword and trying to do his hair through it. And she basically comes in, but there was a little nod to, he's like, I just kind of wish I was back on the farm. And, there's Forsaken running around. I just want to be on the farm, even with your cousins. And she's like, what did you expect? The last battle was going to be fought with kittens. And then Lan rolls in and he's off to go and talk. But yeah, no, the Logain, playing stones, it's a gentleman's game. Like, he's got these little barbed taunts that he does, and he's just quick with it.
I love it.
Yeah. The actor himself plays a fantastic, like the role he's playing, he's doing a great job with Logain and that sort of intricacies around that character, that sort of menace, but as well as that sort of that madness level there. Do you expect him to give you a straight answer? No, you're not going to get a straight answer from me.
No.
But he's got the key, and he doesn't even give him. He says about he talks about the thousands of tiny strands and being knotted. So Lan's like, sweet, that's good. And then Lan's like, see ya. I remember what you did with Kareen and Stefan. I know what you did there. I'm not giving you the key now. But there are two brown Arja that want to study, two browns that want to study a man who can channel. And I was like, ooh, let's go.
Jeez, man. The guy, I feel for him. I really do feel for him in that moment. But such an interesting scene. Again, Lan not giving him what he wants. We do need to backtrack to a scene that happened earlier in the show. And this is where Egwene is on the proving grounds.
Oh, yes.
And she is there with Rhaena. And they have to channel light and beam it out to show the limits of their power. And throughout all of this, a couple of interesting things happen here. The main Sudam that is there, that is like the trainer, is saying, like, what is her name? She allowed her to keep her name, which you can see she's like, okay, well, that's weird, but okay, Egwene it is. And she's like, you have to work with me here. Don't embarrass me. You'll pay for it, all that kind of stuff. And then going out there and obviously, seeing the extent of Egwene's power, that light that she did, that sort of explosion of air could be heard and felt almost all the way to farm, which they
you had that disruption of Lyle, and as well as the wee ginger cat that was sitting there.
Yeah, so such a cool scene. But again, it's just like she's really treating Egwene like a dog. Like, know your place. You'll get a treat if you're good. You'll get punished if you're bad in this situation.
Yeah.
And this leads into one of the most interesting scenes with the two of them when they get back to the kennels. Yeah. And she's washing her hands and talking to her about how, the reason you don't, and I get the angle she's trying to take there, because she's like, the reason you're not fully on board and maybe you don't feel good about your role currently is because you don't understand what it is that we're doing. But we're collecting warriors for the light, all to be under the Empress. Everybody will be together fighting against the dark. And that is our bigger cause. And she thinks that this is going to inspire Egwene. But what she doesn't realize is that a friendship, when one person's got this big power dynamic in one direction and you're compelling people to do something for you, that's not how true friendships are born. That's not how people are brought together. So Egwene's line there that she says, I will kill you,
Yeah, Renna, I will kill you. It's like, yes. That was literally after having that last episode where it was very Egwene heavy to having this episode where we had that one key line from Madeline was just pitch perfect, delivered brilliantly. There's a few, and I love the details that they add for this scene. There's a beautiful don't get me ready.
Not happening.
Not happening. There's too much of a power struggle there. There's no there's no happy wife, happy life in that relationship. The fact that in her cell she went from having just one jug and a cup, she's got little candles, she's got a whole lot of extra things now that she didn't have previously, and that's almost like a reward for being a good girl and showing that you've made me proud, so I'm gonna give you treats. And the first thing she does after that is Renna storms off in a huff, takes her cup and the bowl and storms out, which I think is just very fitting of a very childish way that Renna acts.
I think it's amazing how well the actress, again, I mean, we always come here and we give props, but man, like Renna
even
is being
Renna,
portrayed.
Renna, the actor that portrays Renna, is doing a fantastic job as well.
That's what I'm trying to say. Yeah, that's what I was trying to say. So she's doing such a good job with doing it, because you really get that feeling with Renna that she, like Andrea Lee says here, does, I don't know if she romantically cares, but she does love Egwene in her own twisted way. And she's got this really manipulative personality and how she comes across.
It's a pride of ownership. It's a pride of ownership. She even says, everyone will know that you are mine. You know, like you're when they're at the proving ground.
Like when you get your new shiny car.
Yeah, it's everyone's going to know how powerful you are and that you are mine. All the Soldan will see you, and they're going to know that, and that's a possession thing. That's a, you've got all this power and you're mine. Like that's that ownership factor. That's a dehumanizing once again of Egwene going, you're powerful and you're mine, and everyone's going to know it.
What a line though to end it on. And listen, I'm with everybody here in the live. I'm with everybody in the live. I was so happy to see that, because it shows you that Egwene understands her situation right now, but she has not lost hope.
Yeah, and I also wanted to, there was a little nod to her trying to show that she's still a woman and is still a person as well. And they sort of dehumanize that you're not a woman, you're a thing in the last episode. Do you remember I talked to you about the braid and the importance of that in the Two Rivers and the sign that you're a woman? And that's how that scene ends as well, is her braiding her hair again back to the one braid, which is her little silent protest almost that I am a woman, which I thought was really cool. And just
that is so cool, because I noticed that. And
yeah.
I was actually made a note for myself, and I almost forgot to ask you what that meant, but that is it. So just her holding on to her individuality, her own humanity through this bad spot that she's in right now, which is amazing. And it's interesting because we're going to move on from this scene and we're going to talk about Perrin, someone who I love in the show. His character has taken a little bit of a backseat, I feel like, in the last couple of episodes, because we're slowly but surely getting introduced more and more to Aviendha, who's the new character on the rise. And I've done my best not to go and research Aviendha at all, because I know that I shouldn't be doing any research or clicking on things just in case I see something. But something that came to mind for me, I didn't put two and two together, I feel like, previously, but Aviendha is an ale woman, just like Rand's mom. Rand is ale. So there is a connection potentially here with like where his people come from. These people that are out in the desert is his people. We don't know who the dad is yet. I don't even think in the books at this point, I don't remember reading anything about his real dad, but that's quite interesting, obviously. So now I'm looking like into this episode. I was like, I need to like pay more attention to these people, because there's going to be some significance in the future towards Rand meeting his own people, and culturally, what's that going to be like? It's going to be interesting in the future. So I feel like there's a lot happening, and I was like, I wanted to so badly to like type some stuff in around the ale, and I was like, I'm not doing it. I'm not spoiling myself on anything. But I loved seeing this traditions that they have, because a lot of this was tradition heavy on this episode with Aviendha being out in the desert. I just want to point out before we go into what happened with her, Perrin with his wolf sight, being able to see the woman in the sand was super cool. Where she was sitting ahead of him. And then obviously them finding out that Julian, a person that she was close to, was buried, and then she has to go through a pretty brutal trial or redemption, I should say, or pay back her toe,
Yeah.
which is the debt that she owed to Julian.
Yeah, it was a really interesting scene. We got introduced to two new women, Bane and Shiad, which do both of them play quite a big part of Perrin's arc in the stories. I'm not going to go into details, but they're definitely intertwined with his story.
Mm-hmm.
And there's the Far the woman, the Ale woman fighters, I really enjoyed that they included the hand signals,
That was cool.
because that's something that they have over the male Ale. They don't have that hand signal. That's very much just a woman's an Ale woman's fighters hand signals. So it was nice to have that. The battle that they had where basically she got Aviendha got her teeth kicked in. I really liked the nice subtle part where they put all their spears and stuff down. But you'll have also noticed there were key things like Perrin's like, I need to save her because they're going to kill her. But
and Hopper,
we know, and Hopper was really worried too. But we know that none of them put their veils up, so that it's basically they talk about when an Ale is veiled, that's someone's going to die. So we knew that didn't go up. Aviendha also dropped her hood, just to make sure that everyone knew that I'm not veiling, I'm not covering up in any way. I'm taking this because I deserve it. Which I thought was, it's just a pride thing and a toe, the Ale way. And that's just it was a really nice, easy, like a nice explanation without once again taking too much time.
Yeah. I love the little dialogue between Aviendha and Perrin about his ring. And does that mean that you're connected to a woman in the wetlands and
you can't lay? Oh, Bane will be disappointed. Yeah. Chad, not so much.
Yeah, that was amazing. That little dialogue, and then the other dialogue as they were getting to Falme, and they saw Falme in the background. Aviendha responding to all of the water and being like, "How is this possible?" She's probably in her life never seen so much water coming from the desert.
No, I've never seen sea like that before.
Yeah, it's these little moments that they do in the show that continues to build the characters and the surroundings for me as a new person to the show. It gives me a better appreciation, but really love that. But now we're going to move into, I think, a scene that would have been probably for a lot of people, they would have really, really been excited to see this. And it was Mat. We go to Mat. Mat gets captured. Immediately when he gets knocked out in the city, I'm like, it's got to be a Shamil. But then we find out, no, it's Lanfear.
Wheel of concussion once again.
Yeah, another one.
Someone else getting knocked out.
Yeah. So he ends up, Lanfear gets him. There's a really great dialogue between the two of them. Lanfear said, "I expected more." She's disappointed in who he is in this life, I guess, basically. And he's like
such a great character.
Yeah, she's killing it. Like, I mean, like if Lanfear, I really hope. Obviously, I don't know how the story plays out, but I really hope Lanfear is like an in-game character. Like, I want her to go deep in the story.
She oozes this power and sophistication, which is so far above where Matt, like you've got this scene. She's in this high fashion jumpsuit that could literally be walking down the street in our world, and we wouldn't think twice about it. And you've got you got Mat on the ground in rags, and she's just oozes it, doesn't she? And he's like, "Where am I?" In Falme. And he's like, "What?"
Sorry, I didn't read some of these comments. We'll go back to that scene as well. But Lena said, "I'd love to see a separate TV series on the Ale. Love Aviendha." That's true. Will Perrin and the Fardame, does that replace the other group situation storyline in the books? Not too sure. We probably can't spoil too much there. Message Will afterwards. Andrew Lee says, and fingers crossed that Perrin is not taking over one of Rand's storylines. Well, let's hope not.
I hope not to.
Braid tug is for Naive and not a Gwen. Yep.
It is, but it wasn't a braid tug. It was a doing up of the braid. I thought about that too. And there is later on in the stories more to do with that braid for both of them.
Yeah. So Hopper does seem very protective of Avienda. So obviously, very quickly became fond because she's now part of the pack.
Yeah.
Andrew says, Matt to Ishii, is that we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about that. But anyways, yeah. So just to finish off with Lanfear, amazing scene. He wants to know how she got to farm as quickly, because we now know that she's taken him to farm, which obviously is where they want everybody to come together. And she's like, well, I can't tell you all my secrets now, can I? So just brilliant. Love how the power dynamic, like you said, she's all that. He's nothing compared to what she is currently. And then obviously Shamil comes in, and that's one of the funniest lines. Love Matt. Matt's really growing on me. He's like, is this a sex thing or a murder thing? Either way, I'd like you to just get over with it.
Just get it over with. Look,
just get over with it.
It's just how good is the actor for Matt? How good is he? He is Matt now. Like, it's just, he's definitely, after this episode, it's just pitch perfect delivery. So it's, and I just, like, for me, I'm watching all this scene happen in this room, and I keep seeing the seals of the other Forsaken just chilling in the background. And I'm like, these are the, like, for me, it's just, just imagine it. It's just these nuclear bombs essentially in concrete form in the background, and everyone else is just carrying on like nothing, like it's nothing. I really enjoyed the Ishmael, which continuing to find out more and more about Ishmael and his motives behind things. And I actually did a little bit of digging because I had a feeling from,
I love finding out. Can I talk about this, the motivation? Like, I could empathize with Shamil in this case. I could really, and I was like, damn, am I like empathizing with him? Because everybody wants immortality, right?
Yeah.
But
he doesn't want it.
Actually, no, but also, have you thought about it? And like, I mean, now if somebody gave you the choice and you could live for thousands of years, you probably say yes, because you don't understand the burden that has on you.
I don't think I would, because you got kids. I got a wife and kids, man. I don't want to be the person burying them. I don't know if I would. I think maybe at his younger self, like a early 20s single man, I may have gone, this would be great fun. But as a parent with children, I don't know if I'd want to be that person that have to bury them later on in life.
Well, Leandrin had to go through that with her son, right? But and what Leandrin went through with her son is a smidget compared to what he's experiencing, because he's gone through this 1,000 times. Like, he's like, I've lived 1,000 lives. We keep being reborn. It's like Freaky Friday every single time. We're doing the same thing every single time, and we're ending up at the same conclusion over and over and over. I just want to smash the wheel. I want to smash it. I want to break the wall, end all of this, and have permanent darkness so I can sleep. And you can almost, like, it's evil, but you can almost empathize with him. Is that he's like a really good villain? It's kind of like when you had in Marvel, you had Thanos, where he's like, he needed to get rid of half of humanity because they were a burden on society, and it was in his mind the bad half that he wanted to cull, basically. But Shamil's storyline is even deeper than that. Like, I mean, I feel for this guy that just wants to sleep. He just wants it to be over.
He just wants to be over. And it's a Groundhog Day. I think you remember Bill Murray, Groundhog Day. He keeps waking up and reliving the same thing over and over again. And that would drive you crazy after a while. Ishmael, he's in the sort of the Luz Theron timeline. He was a philosopher. It was his sort of like his role in that, and 3,000 years prior, he was he was named Ishmael, meaning the betrayer of hope, which I think, if you know of him as being a betrayer of hope, and then you look at him and what he's doing with Matt, and he's trying to make sure Matt he's got no hope left. He's breaking Matt down to a point. Well, I mean, Matt's already spiraling down that sinkhole anyway. No friends. He's his mother. He's seeing glimpses of drinking this tea. I mean, first of all, don't anyone watching this just trust a man and go, hey, try this tea. It's going to make you trip balls. Don't do it, because especially when it's a Forsaken. It's not even like it's an Aes Sedai healer going, hey, this will help. It'll help you sleep. It's a Forsaken who's known to be bad, who's a dark, one of the worst dark friends around. Let's drink this guy's tea just for shits and giggles. No, don't do it.
He didn't want to do it at the beginning, but I feel like there's this part of Matt. There's this part of Matt that this is, he can't help himself.
No, and also there was that line where he drinks it and he's like, "Oh, this is shit. It didn't do anything." And I had a little lull to myself, a little laugh to myself, because I had a similar situation in Amsterdam with a brownie, and sort of took it and went, "Oh, after a while, this is doing bloody nothing. This is terrible." And then, boom. So I was like, I can empathize a little bit there. I know exactly what that line is. And then the things that he gets, the glimpses that he sees were really interesting. He sees, like, just rolling through them, he sees himself, he sees his mum basically once again saying that he's basically, you know, you're him, you know, you're him again, you're dad. And that, I think, goes from season 1, where his dad was a bit of a scumbag. Which is a real shame, because that's a real branch off from the book. In the book, his dad's not like that. And he keeps like reliving that. He sees a man dunking and drowning a man in a bucket. And the first time you see it, it's a man, but then it's him. And it's another one with the hanging. You see him hanging. And then you see him slit in a soldier's uniform. You see a soldier slit the throat, and then it cuts to him. So it's like he's reliving those lives, which I thought was actually really well played out. But I just don't know. There are some fan favorite storylines for Matt that I'm worried that they are trying to rush through and change, and I'm just not sure how it's going to pan out. He does need to have these little bits, but I'm worried that they are branching a little bit too far from the story. But yeah, it's a hard one.
Yeah, and he's a fan favorite character, so this is like one that if they mess it up, it's really gonna upset a lot of people out there. Is what I'm getting.
And then he sort of falls to the ground and is screaming out, and then it cuts away, and then when it does come back to him, he's being patted on the cheek by Ishmael. And I thought, and he's just saying hush hush, like a protective father almost. And I don't know if anyone else picked up on it, but Matt's muttering something. It doesn't say what he's muttering, but I was curious as to whether or not he was muttering Old Tongue, but you didn't really know. And yeah, he kept reliving that pain over and over again. And then you have Ishmael saying, "Look, you know, the freedom of death just leads us to coming back in again." But he wants to make sure that when he closes his eyes, he wants the wheel to be broken, so that when he closes his eyes, he won't have to open it again. And then that whole Matt just going, "How?" was like, oh.
So Landis here says that I think after this season, Matt will be on track, and apparently season 3 is supposed to be pretty faithful to book 4 plot. Where did you hear that, Landis? Is there like some information, credible information out there that talks about what they're going to do? I know that Rafe has been doing some interviews and
Q&As. And he also talked a bit about the fact that season 2 was sort of like a parallels with book 2 and book 3, which I thought was interesting. And then obviously, like Landis has just said, hopefully season 3 will just be more of a book 4 plot. So, let's hope.
Yeah.
But I'm enjoying a lot of what they're doing at the moment. Just the Matt one and how they're playing that, but I'm hopeful that Matt is going to come out of it really well next episode.
This was very confusing to me. Like this episode, as a non-book reader watching it, I was like trying to like pause the scenes, similar to you, see what I was looking for hints as to who Matt is. Like I was looking, but I felt like I had more questions than answers by the end of this. It didn't really give me much.
Yeah. See, Matt in the book is he will go out of his way to help others, like to a detriment to himself. And you even see like things like he's got no money and he gave it to that wee child in one of the other earlier episodes, you know, like that was probably his food money, but he's looking after kids. He's looking after, like, that's what he is. We even see that in season 1 where he's looking after his sisters when his dad's drunk or off somewhere else. Like the first thought for Matt is to go and help the other people. And I think Ishmael is thinking that he's going to break him down further and remove that from him. But I don't think we're going to see that from Matt. I think Matt maybe will link back up with Min, and there'll be a little bit there that will sort of yeah, we'll see some positive. I'm looking forward. I think Matt, whatever he does in the next episode, will make us go, yes, good shit, because we're so prepared for him to go to the dark, from this scene, that I think his retribution arc will be all the more satisfying for us because of what we've seen so far. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense, because the guy's been kicked between the legs many a time so far.
He's been broken down so much, and
it feels bad. It's like it's hard to watch. It's actually getting hard to watch to see him just constantly being like, because he went through all of the torture with Leandrin first.
Yeah.
Then went to Min. Min ended up betraying his trust, and now he's again being tortured. That's his storyline so far this season. It's been hard to watch.
And I feel he's going to come out of it.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about as we move towards the conclusion of this episode, we moved back to not the White Tower, but they're in somewhere, I guess, in a castle. Yeah, Karahan. And Moraine wants Rand to be released. This is where Sion tells him, like, listen, we've done it your way. It's not working. You don't even have the power to protect him. Very important scene. But then they go to the cells. And in the cells, Moraine's there. The Keeper's there, Leanne Sharif. And she is keeping him shielded. And Varen comes in using her words very carefully, spins the truth a little bit, and get Leanne to leave her post to go and help Sion defend the tower. Because Rand had this opportunity, he used the opportunity very well to have a conversation with Lanfear. And we actually do have to talk about that conversation because, again, it was so good. Any interaction between Lanfear and Rand, I'm loving.
Yeah.
Him going to the dream world. They're being back out there in the desolated place and, having this conversation with Lanfear, and then him manipulating her at certain points where she's like, you've got Moraine there. You should be all right. And he's like, maybe I will be, calling her bluff. It's like, maybe all I need is Moraine. And Lanfear's like, she knows he's manipulating her feelings for him.
Yeah.
And she's like,
she likes it. She likes it. She likes it.
She's like, damn, there's a little bit of Lewis in you. I do see it.
Those boots too, eh? Holy moly. The different costumes that Lanfear gets is just,
They're doing it right with
they're
her.
doing a great job with it.
And the interaction between those two, it's like this forbidden kind of love where you're like, it's not going to be
torturous. It's torturous.
And it's bad for you.
Torturing each other.
I've got a thing for the bad girls as well. Like I've gone through that phase in my life where I've dated the wrong woman. So I'm like, Rand, I get it, mate. You're playing with fire. I get it. And
definitely playing with fire. And then cut to her just strolling through the foregate, just boom, boom, boom,
just burning everything.
It's
again a funny line with her getting to the front of the gate, and she's like, "Oh, so pitiful. We've gone back to this after 3,000 years." Just smashes through the front gate. So such a great scene.
And she's so for the flair too. Like the Lanfear is all about the flair. Like, she could have literally just gone in and broken Rand out without needing to go and make explosions everywhere. But she's like, all right, I'll break you out. And instead of going into the castle she goes right to the poorest foregate where there's the poorest people out and just starts firing flames. Yeah, she's just like, I want to make sure they know I'm coming. No, Natasha O'Keeffe has been absolutely killing it, Landis. I agree.
She's the star. I feel like if more people were aware of Wheel of Time and watching it, she'd be up there with some of the great villains of any TV show right now. Like,
her and Ishmael, they're both those two are absolutely, so
they're killing
high quality,
and it's because I feel like it's because both of them are really well fleshed out as well. Like you have, especially now after this episode, understanding Ishmael's motive. Understanding Lanfear's motive. That's a lot of the times in shows where you don't understand the motive of the bad person, except for they're a bad person.
Yeah,
it's not the case here. But such a great scene, and Varen using that to her advantage, right?
And Varen lying, or crafting her words and then you've got Moiraine going, "You're very clever with your words, sister," knowing that she's been
because she didn't say that. She didn't say that that's an order from Sion. She just said that's an order. So it could have been from Varen. She said, that that Sohan needs you at the gates to defend, which is true. She probably does need her there. So she didn't say like, yeah, it's interesting because again, it gives us a little bit of an understanding that what an Aes Sedai tells you in the story moving forward now, you're going to have to very carefully listen to the words, because there could be a moment where we as the TV show viewers are going to be deceived by an Aes Sedai saying something, and we're going to be like, oh, that's fact because they can't lie. So you're going to have to, as a viewer, be extra careful when you're listening to them now moving forward in the story.
Yeah. And they've got, and that also means they're going to be really clever with their writing as well. Otherwise, if they aren't on point with their writing, and they forget a story arc or something earlier on in the season or seasons, they could catch them. They could trip themselves over essentially with that. So they've got to be really clever with their crafting, which I thought was cool. And then Varen breaks them out, and they all head out to the courtyard, don't they?
And
there's like a little
scene.
Scooby-Doo troop of people get together and basically organize to help free them.
Yeah, and it's interesting because Moiraine is desperate before everybody gets there, and she wants Rand to open the way gate, and he doesn't even know how to do that yet, but she's like, you got to do it. Lan says, no, you can do it. Like, Rand, look at her. He uses the one power to see the weaves around her and notices the knot. And then there was a couple of interesting things that happened here. So one bit of information that was dropped by Lan was the fact that he said that not one Forsaken isn't strong enough to still you, which was very interesting because that wasn't known to us before that. So clearly it takes an immense amount of power to be able to do that. And then also Rand didn't have the skill to untie the knot himself at this stage. He's not skillful enough. So he had to cut through it, which a massive risk was taken by Moiraine to allow him to do it, because if he cut wrong, he could have stilled her probably in the process.
They also killed her. They also talked, and it's also another thing where we've talked about the fact that she doesn't trust anyone. She wasn't trusting Lan. She wasn't necessarily trusting Suyan. Her dark friend's nephew didn't trust. Like I said, she didn't trust anybody, and now she's got to trust an experienced male channeler to basically to cut the knot that neither her nor Lan can see on Faith. And that was a big trust moment there.
Big character development moment for Moiraine, because they've put so much capital into telling this story of Moiraine being a lone soldier, not trusting anyone, doing her own thing, to now allow this clearly is going to strengthen that bond with Rand even further moving forward. And it's really interesting because when Suan gets there, this just emotional scene with her compelling her to close the way gate. What did you think of that? Because again, you could see the tears going like as she was forcing Moiraine to do it, and Moiraine, like, I feel like in my mind as a viewer watching this for the first time, I almost feel like this is a place that they can't come back from. I really feel like this is that for their relationship moving forward.
Yeah,
because
it's huge parallels to what Egwene's dealing with Renna as well, like forcing against your will to do something, and that was a huge moment. And like you said, you could tell that Suyan didn't want to do it, but she didn't have. She felt like she had nothing else left, and Moiraine was going to go anyway, and that was like her last. No, I'm in charge here. You will close it, and it broke both of them, and that'll be a hard thing for them to come back from.
Yes. I just want to read this comment here as well. Landis says her straight out saying "I trust you" to Rand was pretty big. My first watch, I forgot about the unable to lie part. Andrea Lee said the Dole Matt drop storyline hint in season 1. Will that reveal be in season 2 final for next season?
I may need to remember that one. I might have to go back for that because I can't quite remember the Dole.
Yeah, I can't remember that either. But again, like you said, she's basically being forced to do this thing, which is insane to see. I feel like this is like, I mean, again, I don't know how the story is going to end, but I don't know how they come back from that, which is kind of sad to see where that is. And then also Suyan in the process of this gets badly injured trying to fight off, Lanfear, which she thinks she's got a chance, and Lanfear just flicks her off. She's so powerful, but she just flicks her off in this moment. And basically,
Moiraine's like, Moiraine's trying to stop her. And she's like, don't. and it's just the doof. And that shows you how casually and how strong these Forsaken are again. You even got it when you got it when Lanfear opened the Waygate. We watched Moiraine really take time, had the leaf type power symbol going behind her to open it, and it was a process, whereas Lanfear just opened, and she was able to just flick a wrist essentially and send, and it was very much the same as how Suyan did the same to Rand in the throne room as well. Like, you're untrained. Poof, any simple Aes Sedai could deal with you, and the flip. Now we've got this heavily trained Aes Sedai sitter, Aes Sedai, the head of the Aes Sedai, and she's just fried by a Forsaken without an issue. And it's interesting. Shows you those power dynamics and the levels of
and how far Rand is from Lanfear, and Lanfear is kind of like keeping him alive. The Forsaken are keeping him alive, which clearly they themselves know what his potential is, and they know that if they can manipulate him and get him to his potential, then they can use him for the dark to do what they want to do, which is to destroy the world. They can't do that on their own. They need that help. And it's interesting because at this moment, as all of this is happening, Lanfear looks at Moiraine, instantly wants to kill Moiraine. Rand steps in like, no.
Whoa, no. Yeah.
You need my help. If you need my help, you want me to work with you, you can't do this. So again, it shows you that eagerness of Lanfear just to eliminate Moiraine from the board, because even though Moiraine isn't a threat to her with her power level, she's a threat to her with the fact that Rand respects her, I think appreciates her, and can be guided by her. So she knows Moiraine can not manipulate him, but guide him to the light, which is what she's trying to eliminate. She's not threatened by Moiraine as a powerful person in a way.
Not the slightest.
She's threatened by the fact that she's got some sort of a hold on Rand and what Rand's going to become. So that was interesting. And then
it's a jealousy thing. It's a jealousy thing. Lanfear wants Rand to himself. She doesn't want any other females to be having any type of attachment or link to Rand. She wants to be the one and only. So it's very much a jealousy thing, and that's a blind. She's blinded by that jealousy as well, which makes her ex-girlfriend problems. She's crazy, man. There was that was really interesting how she stepped in and said, like, and he also, you grow more every day, you grow more and more like Luz, is a statement that Lanfear says there. Which I thought was interesting.
That's interesting. I don't remind this scene because I don't remember the scene. I'll have to go watch it again. But this scene reminds me of the conversation Moiraine had in season 1 with Min. She said she would be Moraine's downfall.
Lanfear,
yeah, interesting.
Then Lanfear's like, oh well, a broken what was her line? A broken Marillion is more useful than a dead one. And I was curious as to how is she broken? What has she done? Is it broken because of the fact that
she's injured
or has she stilled her? Like, how is she broken? But then there was a last passing moment in there, which was really, hard on the old heart. This whole scene was pretty tough. Was the fact that you had this bit where Moiraine desperately wants to go back to Suyan, and so there was almost like a non-verbal communication there, where Suyan's like, go, like there was a little eyebrow rise, like you need to go with him. We can't
really, you think that's what happened? Because I was sort of wondering in that moment if that was the final straw where she left and Suyan was left behind. But you bring up a good point, because Suyan is also, she is duty driven above anything else. So I feel like there would be this mutual understanding that Moiraine had a bigger purpose.
I've spent 20 years fighting for this dragon to be out there. And I watched it twice. Like I said, I've watched it a couple of times now. The first time I was very much in the whole, she's feeling like she's picking Lanfear over her. But the second time I watched it, I just watched it a little bit closer for the visual cues, a bit like I did in the last episode, where there was a few visual cues from Rand and Moiraine, which still haven't paid off, so I could have been well off the mark there. But for this one, I just got that feeling that Moiraine desperately wanted to go and check on Suyan, even after she'd been forced like she did earlier on. But I get the feeling that it was more like an eyebrows, and then it cut to her leaving, and then you got that little grin or a little smile from Suyeon as she closed her eyes, like, oh, good, it's sorted. And I got that sort of that. I noticed that just looking more at the facial expression. So I think she wanted her to go.
Yeah.
I don't think it was set up for her to go like that. I don't think that was the whole plan all along. But I think in the end, I think she was quite satisfied that at least Rand hasn't gone off alone with Lanfear.
Yeah. Well, this does bring us to the end of this episode, right? So next episode, we're going to be in Farm, and it's going to be all of them
We're all there.
together.
We're all there. We're all
for the
there.
first time. And somewhere in this, like I said, Moraine's motive is also for Rand to proclaim that he's the dragon, which is interesting, right? It's not just the Forsaken. So for once in the storyline, both the Forsaken and Moraine, or I don't even know if Moraine speaks for the Aes Sedai, but Moraine's side of this, they're both pushing in the same direction. And it's for him to be proclaimed as the dragon. Because it basically lives, or I believe that it makes the prophecy come true. It speaks into the prophecy that he's supposed to go there and proclaim this in a ball of fire. It's basically what they said. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out.
What was it? That was proclaim himself. The dragon is supposed to proclaim himself there, bannered across the sky in fire. Which is it's going to be cool. It's going to be cool to see. I'll be curious to see how they play it out.
Yeah, I can't wait. I can't wait to watch the next episode. It's I've been hooked ever since the start, and pretty soon I can start reading book 2, which I'm also excited about. Danica says, have they said for sure that there is a third season? I believe there is.
No, third season, yes, they're still fighting for fourth. Fourth has not been greenlit yet, or has not gone into production. Season 3 definitely has.
That's good. Well, hopefully people keep watching it, and we keep getting more seasons come out for it. It has been very popular. Prime doesn't do that many shows at the moment either, so it'd be good for them to continue to push their weight behind this one. But for now, if you got to this point of the podcast, thank you so much. Please consider subscribing if you like this content. We did say in the beginning of the podcast, myself and Will, we want to continue to add more, shows to the channel moving forward that are similar to this, which we're thinking about doing House of Dragon for the second season, and maybe going back and rewatching the House of Dragon first season and podcasting a little bit about that as well. So if you like this genre of content, then please consider subscribing, hitting the like, and we'll catch you next time. Is there anything, Will, that you wanted to add before we
Actually, I was hopefully you're going to say that there was I'm a big fan of dad jokes, and there was a wee pun that was given in the scene where they were all the Aes Sedai with Rand and Varen, and that they were about to leave, and Varen's water goes, light be with you, to Lan as he's giving him a torch to take into the ways. And I was just like, oh, that is fantastic. Nice little dad joke to part with. And I appreciated that chuckle. That had me chuckle.
One dad to another dad appreciating dad jokes.
Dad jokes. Love a good fun.
All right, we'll catch you guys next time here on the Nullified Take. Thank you so much for watching, and bye.